I've seen a lot of videos where people are talking about getting Steam OS dual booted on their um, Asus ROG Ally. Now, I've got the Ally in the video, um, and I got intrigued by it, so I dual installed it. There was a couple of issues I found in the process. One of them was you have to disable the Wi-Fi connection in Windows. Otherwise, when you try to sort of install the Steam OS, it can't get through to the network stage. So it's trying to get a network connection, and you can't progress it till you've got one. But it wouldn't even find it. It said no networks available, and it was only by going back into the Windows install and disabling the Wi-Fi then it worked. So that's the workaround if anyone decides to install it. Now, I really enjoyed it, so it's not a case of I'm saying avoid it at all costs. But for me, I didn't think the benefits sort of outweighed the annoyances really. So, like I say, I preferred the UI for SteamOS, and I like how sort of intuitive it is with the controls. It just works perfectly. You press a button, it definitely responds in a specific way. Whereas I find where you have to do a level of customization elsewhere. So I think the SteamOS was great in that sense. And of course, you can go to desktop mode for Linux, but I'm not really a big Linux. I only know very basic from when I had a Steam Deck in the past. Um, but one of the problems I had with little nuances, it was just like it's not worth the hassle. One is not all games are available because it's literally emulating the software to allow it to work on Linux when it was never designed. So some games just don't work, and it's like that's part of my library that I want back. One of the big ones, of course, is the fact that if you want launchers such as like Call of Duty, Fortnite, and things like that, things with anti cheats and extra phases, you lose access to them. And I just think that ain't ideal. There was something else that was really bothering me. Oh, that's it. Yeah, the partition. So when you're setting up Steam OS, of course, you've got to have an idea of how much storage you want for Windows, how much storage you want for the Linux install. Now, the way I would really do it, in hindsight, if I was doing it now, I would install everything Windows related that I want, and then I would know what I've got left because I did it half and half, and in the end, I wanted more Steam games just because Steam is the predominant one. By the time I've put Diablo 4, Fortnite, Call of Duty, and some other games, because you've got the Game Pass and all sorts, I hadn't used the 1 gig up, the 1 terabyte, I mean, because I've got a 2 terabyte upgraded to storage. If you was on a smaller storage, I wouldn't even bother. If you've only got the base model with no upgraded storage, I wouldn't even bother upgrading the changing, unless you haven't got any multiplayer launchers. But I want all of it. So there was that side of things, and the other thing was another one. I was getting fed up with the UI. As much as it's good on Steam OS, every time I was bouncing back to the original state, which is Windows, I was pressing buttons, and sometimes I didn't have a clue. I'm expecting it to do something because that's what it did in Steam OS, and it's doing a different function on the Windows. And I just thought this isn't making any sense. I can do Steam now. It ain't the same, but it's a trade off. You can just do Steam Big Picture mode. So, for instance, you can go into Steam, and within settings, you can tell it to launch straight into Big Picture mode when you want it to go when you launch Steam. So you don't have that transition phase. It literally just bounces straight into Steam Picture mode, and it's like for me that's good enough. Like I say, sometimes the controls aren't quite there, but you have access to your entire library. So the Steam Deck doesn't because of the fact that it's running on Linux. But every other game on if you just keep the Windows based system, you can play everything anyway. The whole Steam catalog. Um, so in the end, I was like, this is just ridiculous. I'm bouncing back and forward, dual booting. So some games are on one side of the system, the others are on another one. So let's say I want to play my Steam games, all of a sudden restart, BIOS, switch to the Linux, and then reboot again. So then it goes into Steam OS, and then I'd have access to that library. But then if I'm thinking I want to play something multiplayer or I want to play a specific game, let's do the whole thing again. In the end, you just want it in one place. How can I have it in one place? That's what the challenge comes. I'd set up the entire emu deck, so I had all my emulators running and everything, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a headache. But for me, it was like to delete it and do it again. It's not going to be the end of the world. Let's just do it. But what I did, I made sure that I had the emulators running perfectly on Windows first because I didn't want to delete it and then go wait. So if the emulators couldn't work, it would have been a bigger question for me. But because I managed to get that running on the Windows side of the system, I was like, the rest's simple then, isn't it? It's just literally all you're doing is re-downloading your games on Steam. So, there are, like I say, there are options on there which I think are great. The sidebar and all sorts that you can get on the Steam OS, but I don't think it's as great as everyone's making it out to be. I think, yeah, it feels like a console rather than a Windows device. But some of us are PC gamers anyway. So I'd say, look, there's a user experience for everyone, isn't there? But I think reality is it's like a lot of console-based players who want a handheld, powerful. Yeah, they'll probably go Steam OS because it feels like a console. I think people that are used to tinkering with their computers and things aren't going to have a hard time with Windows-based system because you've got the Asus software that literally acts as a launcher. It has all the settings, and you can literally you can even create a favorites tab. So you can install your games, put your favorites in there. Even has a list of launchers that's there as well, so you can load Steam from that, and it'll boost straight into Steam. So effectively, I've got all the launchers running. I've got EA Play for certain games. Um, I've got Blizzard's one for Diablo 4. I've got Xbox for the Game Pass with Black Ops. I've got Epic Store because I've got games on Epic Store. There's GOG you can download. Um, and it's like you're opening up a whole wealth of games to play. And for me, if I was to just go one system only, I already found the hindrance when I had a Steam Deck in the past. People can say, "Oh, it's fine, it's fine. You only miss this." You shouldn't have to miss anything. That's the point. You're missing things. You're literally missing experiences. You could say it's only this game or that game, but it tends to be the best game. It's the one you're going to have the most experience with. But if you want it just as an arcade machine, I think, really, or something very light and it works with emulators, then I think, yeah, great. But the real problem I have is the Steam Deck is actually more expensive. This model here, the Allen, I know, but I got a great deal on this. So I got this for £300, 305. So Steam, it was on the Black Friday sale on Amazon. It was 400. Then I went on eBay and Curry's in the UK, which is a big store. They have like a clearance as part of their company. So it's things that I think have been returned, refurbished. So it's 370, so it's £30 less. But then there was a voucher code for eBay where you got up to £75 off. It was 20%. So I literally got it for £305, which I was like, wow, that's crazy. What sale is this? Is the problem as well. What was the sale on the Steam Deck? Steam didn't even do a sale at all. They didn't even try to compete. So I was like, you know what? I'm not. That's not even. It's not even a question at this point. The 512 gig model, I think, is 300. Is it 300? 479, I think, actually. I think 479 pound. I think for the 512 gig model. Bear in mind that's what this one come with. And I'm like, that's 150 pound more than this, and this is more powerful. What is the sense? What, just because it's got a Steam OS over the top of it, which you can do anyway, and it's got a trackpad. That's literally the only benefit. It's got a trackpad, maybe an OLED screen. I can't remember if it's got the OLED. Who cares? These are not trade-offs worth it when this is more powerful. Now, like I said, I tried to have the best of both worlds. I put the Steam OS on there, and at first I was like, this is great. I'm liking this. But then the little nuances come up, and I was like, this is just stupid having two separate systems in the same device. It's all right if you're a tinkerer and you want to keep in touch with things, but as a typical gamer, I want my catalogue together, and I don't want to feel like I can only download the games up to this limit. That's what it got to. If I wanted more Steam games, because I don't know how you alter the partitions between Windows and Linux once you've installed them, because I don't think Linux can control Windows, and I don't know how much Windows. It was like, this is just a nightmare. I don't know how to reclaim some of that space for one or the other. So let's say I wanted more Steam games installed. I'd have Steam OS up to the point of the hardware, to the storage until it was full. And then if I wanted more from the Windows side, I would have to just log back into Windows and use Steam directly on the Windows side. So it's like, what are we doing? What is the point of any of this shit at this point? This is just so irrelevant. And once you've done something, of course, it feels like a nightmare to have to redo it. But to uninstall that was easy anyway. You just have to make sure it's boot into Windows, which, of course, with this device, you would be in Windows. So you've booted there. And then you would just go to Partition Manager and delete the partition. It's as simple as that. And then you would extend the volume of the existing one. So it doesn't take long to install SteamOS, but then at the same time, it doesn't take long to take it off. It's great as an experiment, but I would be very worried if it become mainstream. I've just seen an article or someone talking, saying that SteamOS could eventually come to other handhelds, like actually embedded in or something. And it's like, that's scary for me because I don't want it. So lucky I've got this one that's Windows based. But I don't want to lose the launchers. That would actually bother me a lot if we lost the game launchers, and we got restricted with the games we can play. That's not a place I want to be, you know. So like I say, it's nice to have the Steam OS, but I personally have the notion that we don't really need it.